Julian Assange, Glenn Greenwald and others have written about Project Vigilant. He writes, Vigilant, an alliance of some 600 volunteers, has been scouring internet traffic for 14 years and passing the information to the U.S. federal authorities, said its director, Chet Uber. He said the Florida-based group has encouraged one of its members, Adrian Lamo, to inform the authorities about Bradley Manning, the former intelligence analyst who allegedly provided the WikiLeaks site with classified military information. Mr. Uber said Lamo had been reluctant to expose his friend, so the Vigilant chief arranged for him to meet federal agencies. Its members reportedly include the security chief for the New York Stock Exchange and former technology officials at the National Security Agency and the FBI. Can you talk about Project Vigilant?
Well, it's an interesting trend that we're seeing. You know, when the Pentagon Papers came out, really, most of the impact, at least as far as I can see, wasn't from the content of the material. Rather, the back reaction against the Pentagon Papers exposed something else. It exposed the inner workings and thoughts of the Nixon administration. And we're starting to see something like that happening in this case, that if you like, the crackdown and the attempted covering up is revealing some of the inner workings of the security sector and the Obama administration in the United States. And Project Vigilant is an example of that. So one of the informer in this case, a sort of a researcher for Wired magazine by the name of Adrian Lamo, who's alleged to have shopped or ratted out Mr. Manning to the FBI, apparently was involved with this defense military contractor that had a program to engage in mass spying. The head of that on U.S. soil, the head of that organization says that they are monitoring 250 million IP addresses daily with its software that's installed in some 600 locations around the United States. So this seems to be if you like, a privatized version of the National Security Agency, perhaps giving the government a bit more freedom. Now, we have some public record in relation to Project Vigilant. The rest of the statements are coming from this man who's the CEO. His interest in speaking about this publicly needs to be understood. He seems to be wanting to drum up more people in various ISPs and other organizations to install this spy software either for the ideological reasons or promise of payment. And it's a disturbing trend to see that indirection into a private company for spying. And he says that he speaks quite carefully and says that the spying that's occurring on internet use in the United States through his organization is as a result of a little sort of line in the small print that they get when they sign up that is not seen. And that small print is being used to collect and spy on these people without breaking the law.
We're talking to Julian Assange, founder and editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. By the way, that quote that I read, the piece, wasn't Glenn Greenwald, though he's written about it, but Tom Leonard in the Telegraph in London. Project Vigilant press release says the organization tracks more than 250 million IP addresses a day and can develop portfolios on any name, screen name, or IP address. Jeremy Scahill has stayed with us. We were talking to him about President Obama's speech and the drawdown in Iraq. Jeremy, your comment on what Julian has said.
Well, I mean, I think the attacks that are being put forward by Mark Thiessen, Mike Rogers, even by the Secretary of Defense and the Chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I mean, the painful, bloody irony of what they're saying about WikiLeaks and about the individuals that provided these documents to WikiLeaks is that the U.S. is the primary force jeopardizing Afghans every day. Afghan civilians every day. When you read in the documents these assassinations, essentially, of civilians that are taking place, why is there no outrage about that? Why aren't there courts-martial of the individuals responsible for these massacres? Where are the prosecutions for murder? I mean, Mark Thiessen can write with a straight face about the crimes of Julian Assange and his criminal syndicate, and yet supports the kind of slaughter that we see happening in these night raids on a regular basis. The other issue I would raise when we talk about the sort of rats that Julian is talking about that are trying to hunt down people that are essentially whistleblowers, is that the Washington Post just did this massive series about the private intelligence industry. Hundreds of thousands of private contractors working for for-profit companies are given access to top-secret documents on a daily basis. I think that the Pentagon should be much more concerned about these corporations that are potentially sharing classified information with other clients, be they corporate clients or foreign governments, than they are about whistleblowers. Because the real threat to U.S. national security likely comes from the fact that we've given all of these contractors access to this information while they simultaneously work for other governments and other corporations. So, I mean, the main point I would say here is that journalists that dwell on this issue of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks endangering Afghan collaborators with the U.S. Should spend a little bit of time focusing on who's been killing Afghan civilians on a regular basis. Yes, forces within the Taliban do it, but so too do U.S. military forces, and there's no accountability for those kinds of killings. Julian Assange.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. But I see the sort of one positive outcome from these attacks on us, which of course are designed to deflect from the 20,000 deaths that we exposed in this material, including thousands of children, is...
Can you repeat the number, Julian Assange, of numbers of civilians killed that you think are
there's around 20,000 in this material. Because the information is sort of well structured, you can get a computer program to just add it all up. And so there's around 20,000 individuals. The counts of 20,000 deaths are in this material. And the Afghan government is complaining that last week there was a NATO attack that killed 52. So it really is quite extraordinary that the press is, that some parts of the press are concentrating on some hypothetical threat to some people. I mean, when the London Times, sort of, if you like, was the first to push on this, it's a rival to The Guardian that had the 14 pages that we printed. And the example that they raised was of someone who, it turned out, had been dead for 2 years, that we were alleged to have killed. If you actually read the headline, the named man was already dead, but constructed in such a way that it looked like that we had done it, but in fact the U.S. military or something else had killed this man 2 years ago. So the beneficial thing I see coming out of this is, well, we finally have statements from Mullins and Gates that they have concern for Afghan civilians in this process. Now, of course, it would be nice to see that actually translate into something on the ground. We have to look at the data itself. I mean, this material was available to everyone, as far as I can see, on SERPANET, which is the secret network, which is not a high classification. That's just a low to medium level classification. So available to hundreds of thousands or millions of individuals, and included Afghan informants and collaborators' names. And that is not how, for example, we do things. And we always use code names. We'll never keep those names. And the U.S. has simply shown contempt for these Afghans. It never really cared about them at all. And that's why it didn't help us to try and go through this enormous quantity of material to find these names, and it never engaged in correct security procedures to protect its sources in the first place, because we didn't give a damn about them.